Change, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And you've been talking to people on Twitter, I understand.
I have. Before I start, I'll say this first this week, as I left it till right at the end when I'm sure no one was listening last time. But if you do have anything you'd like us to promote on the show, obviously X-Files related, do just hook me up on Twitter. I'm happy to promote kind of like any conventions or competitions or anything X-Files fans related that you might have on the go at the moment. But this week, across our Twitter and Mastodon accounts, which are at GetStrange42 at Twitter and at GetStrange42 at universodon.com for Mastodon, we've been talking about our favourite comfort episodes of the X-Files, because 'tis the season now, it's December, and I'm allowed to talk about Christmas.
Damn, she's right.
So yeah, I asked you to let me know what your favourite comfort episodes, so your favourite ones that give you that warm, fuzzy feeling are. And I've had some questionable responses, but yeah, some interesting ones too. So what would you say before we start? What's your favourite comfort episode?
I would go for Jose Chung's From Outer Space.
Yeah?
Might not end in a terribly positive light, but still, I very much enjoy that one. But also, I think, as I'm pretty sure came up in your one, the Lost Out of Forehead Sweat is a particularly good one.
Yeah, Forehead Sweat was mentioned. I'd agree with Forehead Sweat. That's one of the episodes that gives me the warm fuzzies too.
But also Bad Blood and Curse of the... No, Mortal Scully, the Rare Monster, isn't it?
Yep, the Were Monster, the Abbott and Costello titled one.
Yep.
Yeah,
and how about you?
I'd agree with Forehead Sweat, but I'm also going to say Je Sweat, the Genie episode.
Oh, yeah.
For one of mine, and Humbug. I'm really fond of Humbug. Again, it's a bit bittersweet in the end, but it is a really funny, just really kind of fun episode.
Yeah. And actually, I think for seasonal best, though, we can't beat The Ghost Who Stole Christmas for being...
one of the few Christmas episodes.
And also a very positively ending Christmas one. We're not going to mention Christmas Carol, because, yee.
True. Yeah, it's funny you should mention Bad Blood. By a landslide, people kind of agreed that Bad Blood was the kind of feel-good episode on my little survey.
It's a shame it's so far hence before we can get to that.
Yeah, you can't talk about Bad Blood for a while. Also, with a similar amount of votes, we had How the Ghost Stole Christmas, the pilot. I guess with it being the first episode, people have fond memories of it.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
And Small Potatoes.
It used to be a good one. Unfortunately, there's some really skeezy implications in there that we can't quite overlook, unfortunately.
Yeah. The other two that had multiple votes were Quagmire and Detour. Detour surprised me somewhat.
Quagmire's a bit surprising, given that we've got a death of a regular recurring character in that one.
I know. But it's a funny episode.
It is a funny episode.
It is light-hearted. Detour took me by surprise. Somebody gave me a really rational explanation of why Detour, about how there are heart-to-heart conversations with Mulder and Scully in the episode. You get a bit of Scully singing in there and stuff like that. That it's lighter-hearted than I remembered it being. I mean, I'm nostalgic. As I've said before, Detour was the first episode I ever watched. So I do have a kind of level of nostalgia for it on that basis.
Okay, that makes sense. Sculder shipping, I should have known. That ties nicely into our today's episode. But anything else?
No, other than my weekly Mulder exploits, it's been giving me a good run of early season Monster of the Week episodes, so I'm back on form on Mulder.
Hooray.
Yep, one of them was today's, in fact, was Fire, which ties into what you're about to talk about.
Cool. So, without further ado, let's go for Fire. First broadcast on the 17th of December 1993, it was written by Chris Carter and directed by Larry Shaw. Notable guest stars are Amanda Pays, who played Phoebe Green. Curiously, the only thing that jumped out of her filmography that was of any relevance to us is Leviathan, where she played Willie.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Completely missed that every time we've watched that film.
I'm very fond of that film as well.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, this is Aliens Underwater, but not The Abyss, the other one. And not Underwater, the other alien underwater film.
I'd say it's more like The Thing Underwater.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Mm.
It's also got Ernie Hudson and Peter Weller? It is Peter Weller, isn't it?
RoboCop, yeah.
RoboCop, yeah. Okay. The other guest star of note is, of course, Mark Sheppard, who plays Cecil Lively, best known for Supernatural, where he played Aleister Crowley. But he's also been on Star Trek Voyager, he was on Firefly as Badger, and in Doctor Who as Canton Everett Delaware III, playing a very American person as a British actor.
He is quite chameleonic. You see in this episode, he does an American accent really well.
He does. Surprisingly well. After a day in court, doing something that doesn't seem to involve aliens or supernatural mutants for the first time in their careers, Mulder and Scully meet Phoebe Green, an investigator from London's Metropolitan Police, and Mulder's former lover. There's some immediate friction between Scully and Phoebe. Phoebe is here in regards to a serial arsonist who is targeting the British aristocracy, who burns his victims alive and leaves no trace of evidence. The only links between the crimes are the suspect's love letters to the wives. His latest target has just moved to Cape Cod to escape an attack by the killer. Mulder and Scully and Phoebe visit a pyrotechnic expert who speculates that the only thing capable of causing the intense heat in these attacks is rocket fuel. Mulder relates to Scully that he and Phoebe had a very complicated relationship and that his involvement on the case is part of her mind games because she knows he has a debilitating fear of fire. Meanwhile, the actual killer, Cecil Lively, has killed a caretaker and taken over the household responsibilities of the house where the British aristocrat is staying. He is literally painting rocket fuel onto the exterior and interior of the house. He befriends the children and the family's driver, and offers to do errands for him, and then sets a bar on fire. Interviewing a survivor of this fire, they are able to put together a photo fit, though this does not come into play until much later on. Cecil takes over the driver's responsibilities when the driver becomes too ill to help, and drives the family to a party being held in their honour in nearby Boston. Mulder is invited to come along with Phoebe, while Scully continues creating a profile of the killer. During the party, Mulder and Phoebe kiss. Scully arrives and sees this, but then also notices a fire on the same floor where the children are staying. Mulder rushes up to rescue them and fails. Instead, Cecil Lively manages to successfully rescue the children and is then heralded as a hero. The family intend to immediately return to England. Scully continues her research, strongly suspecting that Cecil Lively is the arsonist, confirmed by the police sketch. Everyone converges at the house in Cape Cod, at which point Cecil Lively attacks and sets the house on fire. Mulder overcomes his phobia and is able to save the two children. Scully holds Cecil at gunpoint, but has to let him go past when he tells her the entire house could blow up with a single spark from the gun. Phoebe then throws a can of rocket fuel in Lively's face, which blinds him and causes him to set himself on fire outside. In the epilogue, Phoebe returns to England without talking to Mulder. Cecil has survived with 5th and 6th degree burns all over his body and is in a hyperbaric chamber. This was a good episode. Very silly episode, but very enjoyable.
I am so fond of this. I'm glad we're getting into a good run of episodes now, because some of the early Monster of the Week ones caused me to despair a little.
Yeah, there are some stinkers. One interesting detail about this episode, from the UK perspective, is how we didn't get this one in order when the BBC first ran The X-Files.
Did we not?
We did not. So basically this episode was hacked out and shown separately. The consensus behind this seems to be that people might find the fire effects frightening.
Okay.
Which is actually borne out by comments Chris Carter has made about the episode as well, which, I never actually was quite compelled by this. So what the BBC did was they just dropped the episode out the running order, and they put it on as a separate instalment of something they called Weird Night, which is a whole block of strange programming on BBC Two. Didn't watch any of this. I was only there for the X-Files, which was shown at 11 o'clock at night.
Mm.
So, watching Fire, just imagine that this was deemed so terrifying in 1994 that we had to put it on at 11 o'clock at night.
Just well after Watershed.
Well after all the kids have been in bed. So, stayed up late to watch the X-Files episode, the really disturbing episode, and went, oh, is that it?
Mm.
I was expecting Hellraiser or something.
I guess, and when we talk about them in seasons 2 and 3, there are episodes that were also banned for being too scary, and when you compare Fire to those episodes, it's completely tame.
Absolutely. Kalashari and Home were put out at the normal time with no edits, no complications. I think someone got embarrassed after they did this and said, yeah, we're going to do this stunt again because it did not work. This was a really stupid plan. But yeah, otherwise though, I do think at some points it's not clear how serious this episode is meant to be. If it's meant to be as funny as we found it this time round.
I don't think it's actually supposed to be a funny episode. This one I think is largely unintentional.
Mark Sheppard is kind of the integral bit of this. The whole thing orients around him in a way the other guest stars of Monsters of the Week haven't done so far.
I guess if you compare it with Eve, we always know that Mark Sheppard is the villain in this one right from the opening sting.
Yes. But I think it's also, pairing it with Beyond the Sea is interesting because both of them are so central to their guest stars. Mark Sheppard in this one and Brad Dourif in the next.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact he's got a Spock beard in the cold opening.
Ah, his evil beard.
His evil beard. It's literally the Spock beard from Star Trek.
I love that cold opening as well, just for how incredibly... I'm going to alienate every American listening to this now, but it's how Americans see as English people. It's just the purely American English opening to it, with the very pompous aristocratic family, with their 5 or 6 gardeners outside and all the rest of it.
Yep.
And waving Mama off as he goes. It's so fake English, it does make me laugh.
To be fair, they are meant to be literally the aristocracy.
I think even then, though, there's the aristocracy and there's what America seems to think the aristocracy's like.
You're watching it in 1994 going, what the hell?
Everybody has that Queen's English accent as well. Every English person in the entire episode all speak.
And Phoebe is such a strong accent, and she's actually English, which was a real surprise.
I thought that was put on. But no.
Well, it might be.
It might be put on, but she is actually an English accent. English actor.
Yeah, I've got to get in here because this week we have no connections to Frasier, which is kind of a shock. But like Daphne and Frasier, where she is English and she's putting on that really strong Mancunian accent.
She isn't Mancunian, though.
Yeah.
She is kind of Southern English, I think, and Manchester is, you may not be aware listening to this, is closer to where I'm from in the north, so they have the broader accent.
But we have Phoebe, who's an interesting old friend. I mean, I don't think there was any time implying the previous romantic relationship.
I feel the comment about having sex on Conan Doyle's tomb probably dispels all question there.
Yes. Okay. So I'm not sure what Conan Doyle would have thought of that. Had it been Mary Shelley's tomb, should have been, yeah, go for it. I did the same thing to my mum. Actually true, by the way. Again, this episode, like Jersey Devil, or more so than Jersey Devil, is the kind of the gift that Sculder shippers. Because there's palpable jealousy from Scully right from the start.
Oh, she's so snippy in this episode.
She's so snippy. She's so put out whenever Phoebe and Mulder are flirting or touching or anything. And it just kind of builds up to that whole putting on a fake English accent at the end of the episode to just freak Mulder out for one last time. But then again, I think everyone in this episode is actually into Phoebe.
It's heavily implied she's having an affair with Mr. Marston.
Yeah, and the arsonist guy, he's really into her. Not so much not about Scully, but he's into Phoebe. I think the arsonist guy, though, is kind of the first good example of the possible intentional hilarity with him falling over the photos of the fire and going about how gorgeous it is.
I've got it as "fire has a certain genius." Was the quote.
But this guy is like he's been seduced by fire. I mean, compare it to like Event Horizon when Lawrence Fishburne's character's talking about seeing fire in zero gravity and the beauty of it. And that's like sort of coldly, it's an insight into a barbaric moment where his crew got set on fire.
Yeah.
Versus this guy going, fire, beautiful genius.
Looking at the kind of slides of the fire and kind of on the verge of orgasm, this entire sequence.
Oh my god, man. Who let you in here? This is the FBI. I thought one of the most interesting bits about this was Mulder and Scully confirming our speculation in pilot. Being that Mulder is Sherlock Holmes and Scully is Watson, given they actually call each other by Holmes and Watson in one scene.
That is following the three-pipe problem, however. You've already had Sherlock Holmes brought up in the episode.
You've had it invoked, but they still do expressly identify with the roles that we sort of had them down as.
The three-pipe problem, for the record, is a crime that is sufficiently complicated that Holmes would be able to smoke 3 pipes before he figured it out.
Not that Mulder smokes in this episode.
And Mulder normally hits on the right solution absolutely immediately anyway, through very little evidence.
He's clearly still reeling from Eve, where he was so far off base it's unfunny.
Yeah.
I think, though, we do have to also talk about Cecil Lively and his plans and the accelerant. I can't really get away from the accelerant that he has what looks like a painting with a label on it specifying it is rocket fuel.
Apparently odorless, apart from at the end of the episode as well, when Mulder talks about being able to smell it.
Yes. Oh yeah. Cecil Lively we do see him using this stuff on the interior of the house. Apparently he's done the interior, the exterior. The swing set down the garden has been painted with the accelerant. And you can't smell this stuff, which can burn at 7,000 degrees centigrade.
Until right at the end of the episode where Mulder can suddenly smell it.
But also though, if it's burning that fast, Mulder does not really sort of get injured at all when being next to those flames.
You have the surprisingly tame backdraft in one scene as well.
Yeah.
Which even commented that when they were filming the episode, in that final scene with the kind of burning hallway with Mulder at one end and Cecil Lively at the other, David Duchovny actually was burnt in the sequence. It was a very fast flash blaze that Cecil Lively's actor had to dive out the way when they kind of incinerated that hallway. Yet it has the kind of tamest, most controlled backdraft you've ever seen, just kind of nicely rippling along the ceiling there while Mulder has time to get the kids free.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there's a comment as well that CGI was not up to scratch for doing flames at this point in time, or wasn't capable of doing it realistically. So it's real fire.
Yep, even when they set people alight. Including that super cool bit where he sets his arm on fire in the bar.
Why does he, though? I don't get it. It's a case of, dude, your plan is getting into position, and no, you've decided to just burn on a bar.
Which he does surprisingly well without accelerant as well, because I presume he hadn't had time to paint the bar before that.
Well, if you read some of the wikis and some of the behind-the-scenes books, there is a deleted scene there, which actually explains how that works.
Okay.
So what it was is, he's holding the brown paper bag. You're meant to assume it's the cough syrup for the driver. It's actually another bottle of accelerant.
Okay.
So what he's actually meant to do is he's meant to light his arm on fire, then smash the can on the bar, which is then meant to sort of flood it with the rocket
Which is
fuel.
why it suddenly spreads down the bar.
I mean, you could get the effect with alcohol normally, so it's not outside the realms of possibility.
I was thinking that when we were watching it, is that bar had to be absolutely doused in whiskey for this to work.
But yeah, he's meant to sort of dump accelerant onto the bar and then touch his arm onto that and light the fire that way.
Mm.
But apparently the tin wouldn't break, so there's a shot of him just battering this tin against the bar, trying to get it open.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, it was cut out, and then I think they did regret doing that in the end. But that's how that was meant to work. But still, setting his arm on fire and burning the bar down, that's a bit weird.
So you've got to work on the fact that he's our first actual sociopath as well. You've had psychotic villains in the X-Files so far, but he's the first sociopath in there.
There is that.
And sociopaths like attention.
They do. It just feels like he's been so careful with hiding the body of Bob, assuming Bob's responsibilities, killing the driver off screen.
Mm.
Now he's going to burn down the bar. Mulder's fear of fire is an interesting, previously unknown detail about his life.
Yeah, it's a bit of weird reasoning, I feel, as well, because he's not really had a negative experience with fire.
No, the story is a bit confused, isn't it? Why he has the fear.
It was something like
his
friend's house burnt down and he had to help by sitting in the rubble to deter looters.
Yeah, it's a case of, that's weird. It's also just way too convenient that it's this episode where the fire phobia got brought up.
Mm. You have the kind of connection, however, where I think they keep referring to Phoebe as being fire throughout the episode. So it's not just Mulder's fear of fire as a physical, tangible, burny thing. It's also Mulder's kind of negative experiences and almost fear of Phoebe.
Yes, well, I could certainly buy that. She is pretty ruthless. Very dismissive and very dismissive of things. But weirdly not of Mulder's weirder theories.
There's not really any sex appeal between her and Mulder, though. It's more a kind of, this is something that happened a long time ago and Mulder has largely put it behind him.
Yeah, although he's willing to pick up at the moment's notice.
The traumatic ex.
Yeah. I mean, there is that note, I think you found, that she was intended to be more regular recurring character.
Yeah, it turned out that she just reviewed very badly, and so they decided to never bring Phoebe back again.
What would it have been like if we'd actually had that?
I did see some reviews of this episode that deemed her unnecessary, saying you don't need that tension with Scully, at least not at this stage in the series.
I think the shippers might disagree with you, because it's the whole confirmation there's something more there. She's not happy. The one thing of the after effect of the bar, though, is they interview the woman, the survivor, who was trying to flirt with Cecil.
Yeah.
And they ask her to help do a photo fit.
Mm.
And this is one of these things you see in films and TV a lot. And I personally always sort of look at it and go, how did you express this? How do you even start with a photo fit? Sort of saying, is his face oval, chunky, square? He had a big nose. How would you actually even try to describe someone so someone can do an artistic impression of it?
It might be my level of observation, but I think it would come down the lines of, yep, he had eyes, he was possibly male or female, hair was somewhere between long and short, brown or black.
But no one in these things ever has a problem doing this, do they?
And they always look exact, because you can't look at that picture and not see Mark Sheppard.
Yeah. So I am genuinely curious as to what the process actually is. So I don't think I've ever seen anything on how you actually do it and how easy it is to
You very rarely see them anymore, at least not in the UK.
Well, I think CCTV has largely replaced it.
I remember back in the days of Crime Watch, you sometimes had that sort of thing, but other than that, I can only think of classic things like the Zodiac when they had that picture of him and things like that.
Yeah. I'll say hold on to Zodiac because that's going to come back into Beyond the Sea.
Absolutely.
Back over here in Fire, one of the bigger events then, like towards the end of the second act-ish, is that fire in hotel.
Yes.
So we get around to how the setup is weird. Because it's a case of, they're holding a party in honour of the family. And immediately, what?
We don't really know what this family is wealthy for.
They're just aristocracy.
And they're English.
English aristocracy. So they're having a party being held in their honour.
Maybe people in America really like English people and this is just a common thing. If so, we need to get over there.
Absolutely. So they're having this party in Boston. Okay, weird enough. Phoebe's going to be there in her capacity as a guardian, and that felt a weird twist, because up to this point, it seemed like she was inspected with Scotland Yard, who wasn't actually associated with the family and had come over in spite of them, but now she's on protective detail.
Mm.
And she gets Mulder up there. And then Mulder is ready to get down that night. Because it's the whole, oh yes, I have a room at the hotel. And the whole, Scully saying, I can fly up to meet you and give you the new evidence. No, Scully, it's fine, you stay down there.
Poor Scully.
Yep. And Mulder doesn't get anything either. But then we have the arson attack, which Scully fortunately notices the alarms going off without the alarms going off. She's on the fire panel.
Oh, she just sees the blinky, there's a firelight.
Alarms? Sprinkler system? Anything? I mean, admittedly, sprinkler wouldn't be any good if this was the accelerant, but I don't think there's any hint they're using accelerant up there, is there? I don't think we can get a cause of the fire.
You only kind of see it licking around a corner. Again, quite tame.
That flame jet at the end of the corridor. I just sort of...
Yeah, well, we've heard about the certain genius of fire, but they're really, really controlled burns.
Yeah.
So.
But I like Mulder sort of rushing in to help the children without a second thought, and then it's a case of, oh yeah, I'm terrified of fire. I've got smoking inhalation. And then medical practice again breaks down. Mulder has smoking inhalation, dealt with the fire department, taken to his hotel room, left overnight. Don't you have to go to hospital for this?
One would think so, or at least make sure you've got someone with you in case you take a turn for the worse.
I'm sure Scully was looking after him all night.
Sat right next to him, staring at him. It's like, when someone's got a concussion, I imagine they'd at least say, oh, make sure you got someone with you.
Yeah. But no, apparently Mulder has smoking inhalation, and that's just fine. We're not going to worry about that at all. And Cecil rescues the kids, and therefore is deemed a hero.
Well, it's a good job he was there to rescue the kids, to be fair, because there's no way in hell that Phoebe could have run in that dress.
No. And her stilettos.
Protective detail for this family, and yet she was wearing the strappiest of cocktail dresses and stiletto heels. Yep,
no firearms or anything.
Well, if there were firearms, I don't know where she was hiding them.
I don't think she had a firearm. I don't think she has a gun in this episode, actually.
To be fair, she's Scotland Yard, and English police don't really go in for guns.
They don't, it's true. Quite why Cecil Lively as well, doing his, as you said, sociopath tendencies by hanging around the lobby and just grinning at Scully.
Just grinning at her.
For some reason.
But it also leads into the kind of mistaken identity, because no one suspects him correctly, as nobody knows he's the driver.
Well, everyone thinks he's the driver, no one knows he's Bob the caretaker.
Yeah, but everyone thinks that the driver is the guilty party in this, but it's kind of a case of mistaken identity because he's not the driver.
Yeah.
So you have people talking about, oh yes, this is our driver, and it's talking about another guy.
He's been with us for 14 years.
And Mulder and Scully referring directly to Cecil Lively, not realising that he isn't the driver.
Which is a fair mistake to make.
That party as well, why were the kids even there?
Oh, I don't know either. They couldn't afford a babysitter, or...
I couldn't afford a babysitter.
Oh, yeah, good point. I'm going to go with it's going to be the whole they have fled the country for protection. I mean, admittedly, they don't actually know he's in the country to attack them, other than the bar might have been an indication.
They don't believe he is, though. They specifically say that everyone in their kind of party has been checked out, and they know that everyone's completely on the level, because, again, no one's expecting the supposedly American caretaker to be this guy. So,
I could see it being... The only thing I can come up with is that Scotland Yard or the FBI have said, can we please keep the family together and not split you over two locations so we can keep an eye on you? But yeah, it is weird they're
still split, though, because everyone's having a party downstairs, and these kids are on about the 10,000th floor by themselves.
14th floor. Yeah, so there's that. And I did notice as well that they don't evacuate the building, because everyone's still clustered in the lobby when they get the kids downstairs again. It's a case of, that's not how fire drills work.
Well, everyone knows that fire is really, really slow, so I'm sure they'll be fine.
Well, that's the point. I mean, as much as we know that Cecil Lively is a pyrokinetic, we don't know if he can stop fires, and it doesn't seem like he can by the end of the episode. He can only ignite them.
He can certainly ignite them. It's unclear if he can even control them.
Yeah, I think
given that when he's covered in the accelerant, he can't douse the fire on himself.
No. So, in essence, basically, he's just a flint. He's actually even less interesting than he sounds. He's not really pyrokinetic, he's just a spark.
Don't you knock Cecil Lively.
He just generates a spark.
He's cool and likeable.
He is cool and likeable, that's true.
Which is the advantage of sociopathic characters, is they are very likeable, like Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. Well, when Cecil Lively decides to sort of swing his trap at the end of the episode, the fire starts off in the bedroom or something, and Mulder rushes in, grabs a shirt and starts sort of batting at the walls with it. And it's very much like the Darkest Timeline Community episode where Troy goes to get Peters and walks back in and Pierce has been shot, turns on fire.
I suppose we can buy that Mulder's in a panic because he's afraid of fire, but he already knows about the accelerant and stuff, and what good do you think it's going to do, kind of beating it with a rug?
Well, again, it's going to, this stuff's meant to burn at several thousand degrees and split water into hydrogen and oxygen to just fuel the fire. Well, and that's not what's coming across at all.
Going on the basis, I remember learning school is that, in a house you eventually reach flashpoint, which is a lot faster than you'd like, within minutes, where essentially the air is so hot that things will just burst into flames.
Yeah.
So even without the accelerant, the longer you're in that room, the closer you're getting to flashpoint, which is the point where it becomes unsurvivable.
Yeah, everyone's just fine. One of the funniest moments I thought, though, was when Scully has Cecil at gunpoint and says, "Oh, don't move," and he says, "You don't know that one spark from that gun won't set the whole house ablaze." And it's, Cecil, upstairs is already on fire. If downstairs isn't on fire now, it won't be long before it is. This is a hell of a bluff, and she should just shoot you.
This is television. Fire moves as fast as you want it to move.
But then we also get the whole, Phoebe just throws a can of accelerant in his face and he's going, "Ah, my eyes!" What's going on?
I enjoy that bit where he totally cracks and just starts yelling, "You can't fight fire with fire!"
It's like, shit, I've set myself on fire for some reason.
It's the whole, you know that there's no way of getting out of this, so might as well go out dramatically.
And he doesn't even die.
He does have 5th and 6th degree burns, which is a bit upsetting.
Yes, I mean,
I had to Google what that meant, because in first aid, when we have first aid training and stuff, they only talk about 1st to 3rd degree, which would be a 1st degree burn is like sunburn, it's superficial, it makes the skin a bit red. 2nd degree would blister, and 3rd degree would kind of go down into the deeper tissue and nerve endings. So these are the kind of 3 degrees you see, because anything worse than a 3rd degree burn is invariably fatal. So I believe a 5th degree burn is going down through muscle, and a 6th degree is burning bone. So Jesus. He is basically, burned to a skeleton by this blaze, which you would expect, as you said, it's reaching 7,000 degrees. He should be a pile of ash.
Yes.
Presumably saved by his power.
Yeah, well, and he is basically Wolverine, we get at the end, because he's regenerating from this at an accelerated rate, and he shouldn't be able to do it.
He certainly doesn't look like he's got 6th degree burns when you see him in that hyperbaric chamber at the end of it.
We should talk about the hyperbaric chamber, though, because if you've watched Hannibal, you will never be able to forget the infamous combing hair in a hyperbaric chamber and blowing it up.
Because it's full of pure oxygen, so therefore it's really flammable.
Yeah. So you've put the pyrokinetic into a hyperbaric chamber. They say they've removed everything flammable from the room around the chamber because of it flame fires, but not the fact that he's lying in a tank full of pure oxygen and
asking for a cigarette.
And oxygen has this tendency with fire. What is going on in this episode? It's bananas. It's great, but it's stupid.
I don't knock it for being stupid. It's fun.
It is fun, yes.
I really enjoy Fire. It's one of the episodes I remembered more fondly, and I'm not disappointed.
No, but I do think it's not meant to be funny at all. I think it's meant to be deadly serious right down the line.
Oh, but Mark Sheppard is having the time of his life playing this character. He just looks gleeful.
Yeah. And I think it also led to one of your most famous quotes from the series, which is the 10 to 1 you can't dance to it.
10 to 1 you can't dance to it. I say that all the time.
You say that all the time. It's this would be the tapes that Phoebe leaves Mulder for some bizarre reason.
Oh, yeah, I don't think you've mentioned those.
I haven't mentioned them. I suppose actually we could go back to that bit at the start as well. Is Mulder and Scully have just left a court case before they meet Phoebe for the first time, and there's the offhand comments there of this isn't like a day off from chasing UFOs and delivery to mutants. It's a case of you've never really done the former, and the latter happened like once. Actually, Mulder, why are you in court? Because this is a fascinating implication of what you've been doing here.
It's because so few of these X-Files have actually ended with something conclusive that would go to court, other than Mulder being arrested.
And he hasn't been yet. Give him time. But they get into Mulder's car, find a tape sat on the dashboard, and it's a fake bomb threat. And it's not clear if that's actually happened or not.
It makes a comment about some British aristocrats who found a tape in the same way, and when he put it in his car, it started a chain reaction that meant that when he tried to leave the car exploded.
Yeah, and then she pulls the door up and just freak the hell out of them.
With Scully in particular looking absolutely petrified by this point.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? Sounds like a threat. Because his car's been left unlocked, which shouldn't have happened.
But she does the same thing at the end of episodes, and both times when Mulder finds the tape, he says 10 to 1 you can't dance to it.
Yep, and we never find out what's on that second tape.
Mulder's over Phoebe by that point.
He is over Phoebe. He told me he was over her before, but no, he's really over her, and she'll never be seen again. I don't feel we'll miss her.
No, I've got to admit, I read that and my first thought was, oh, that's a bit of a shame, and then on thinking about it, it's not really. She didn't really bring that much to the episode. She'd
only be there to sort of induce the shipping dynamic, wouldn't she? To be as a sort of an accelerant, as it were, for Scully.
And to be fair, as much as you can ship Mulder and Scully, particularly at this stage, it is just subtext.
It is.
There is no real kind of tension between them other than these kind of little snippy cute lines.
True. But I do find it interesting that this episode is written by Chris Carter, the person who said he was basing them on the Avengers, which is meant to be make it platonic, even though it's meant to be all flirting up to a certain point.
Wasn't Emma Peel married?
Yes, that did not stop them flirting. This was key appeal of the Avengers, was watching Emma Steele and John Steed get very close. And the whole thing is that they almost do, and then her husband shows up.
It's a classic way to carry tension, though. I mean,
yeah.
You like Frasier with Niles and Daphne.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The series kind of wasn't as good when they finally did get together, because it was all carried by the tension and the will they, won't they. So, Cecil Lively's motivation is that he's kind of got this fixation on women but can't approach them. So does the classic thing of he's obsessed with these women, he stalks them, he doesn't know how to deal with those feelings, so he winds up killing their husbands, the MO.
Yeah.
This woman, this Mrs. Marston that he's fixated on now, we've got to, I guess I'm going to have to call this the British fetish, in there, is that we see him kind of leering over her and eyeing her up a bit when she is a fully clothed, upper-class British woman making tea.
Yes.
The most British thing that we could think of, apparently.
Absolutely. But you've also reminded me as well, though, that there is no indication he's struggling when he talks to her, when he's beside the swings with the two kids.
No, he talks to her just fine. I guess you've got to go with the class system and all the rest of it, because he is also English, but you presume he's lower class.
True.
So it's that whole lady of the manor, I don't have a chance with her sort of mentality.
I've got it. Cecil Lively has read Lady Chatterley's Lover and really wants to put it into practice.
Gone to town with this.
Yes, and it's not working. He's tried to he read it when he was a teenager. Thinks, this is it. All members of the aristocracy are married to people who can't give them children. I'm going to do it. It's never worked.
Lady Chatterley's probably your best example as well, because usually it's inverted and it's the poor woman and the the wealthy lord.
Well, that's the Mills and Boone
the Mills and Boone romance angle, yeah. But yeah, I just like Cecil Lively's thing is fully clothed women making tea, apparently. And you see the picture in the painting when they enter the mansion as well that looks just like this woman.
That's a good point. We don't actually get... I was watching that. We didn't actually get the whole... He did paint this. I mean, we have to assume he did, but It's just there.
I've got to assume he painted it.
Yeah.
There's no other explanation because they weren't aware of this painting before they came to the house or anything, so in their eyes it's a coincidence whoever used to live here looks just like this middle-aged woman making tea.
Absolutely. You have reminded me as well, there's a weird detail of his magic trick he does for the kids.
Oh, with the disappearing cigarette?
Yeah. Apparently, according to him and some of the other people on the production, he did that all in one go, in one take. But on the episode, they've edited it and done cutaways so you can't see it. It is genuinely him doing that magic trick.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, because he was very proud of being able to do this.
Oh. It's a bit like that one in Alien Resurrection where she actually managed to throw the basketball over her shoulder.
Yes, and hang on to that because that's going to come up again in a minute.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That specific basketball?
No, just the film, but for very obvious reasons, which I'd completely forgotten about.
Oh, you've got a connection.
I do have a connection.
Interesting.
Yeah, but anything else?
No, I think we got there.
So, episode 2, as alluded to, was Beyond the Sea. First broadcast, 7th of January 1993. Written by stalwart good episode writers Glenn Morgan and James Wong. Directed by David Nutter. Notable guest stars, very obviously Brad Dourif, who played Luther Lee Boggs, who has been in far too much stuff. Of note, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where he was Billy Bibbit. He was in June as Peter De Vries, who's the Mentat who's played by Polka Dot Man in the most recent version.
Oh, right.
Him!
Yeah.
That was Brad Dourif in 1984.
I'd say Child's Play is his best known thing.
Exorcist III, which feels like a dry run for this episode.
It's very similar.
Yeah. Alien Resurrection as Dr. Jonathan Gediman. I'd completely forgotten he was in there.
Of course he is, yeah.
I'd completely forgotten he was in that film. Probably the most modern famed thing is Lord of the Rings, The Scream of Wormtongue. Mm-hmm. He had the bizarre cameo in Pulse, which he was just guy at bar.
Being creepy Brad Dourif.
He was obviously Sheriff Lee Brackett in Rob Zombie's Halloween films.
Yeah.
Which you don't like to talk about. He also made it into Babylon 5. And interestingly, played someone called Charles Dexter. Charles Dexter Ward?
As in Charles Dexter Ward, yeah.
I can't remember the episode offhand and have to have a look into that in a bit more detail, but I would be surprised if that wasn't a Lovecraftian nod. Also in Star Trek Voyager, because everyone gets into one series of Star Trek, will appear in Millennium as Dennis Hoffman. And I had really not realised this one, he's in Dishonored, the video game, as Piero Joplin, who is the weapon manufacturer for you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's Brad Dourif.
Ah.
Susan Sarandon was also in that one.
Was she?
She's the Empress.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And Michael Madsen, Mr. Blonde.
Yeah.
He was the villainous.
He's the baddie, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And obviously, we also have Don Davis as William Scully, who, in the most related series, would be he was Major Garland Briggs in Twin Peaks, and managed to be in most versions except the revival.
He's the guy who says the owls are not what they seem.
No idea what that means, but it's really good and spooky.
Mm.
Of relevance of recently, he was in the film version of A League of Their Own as Charlie Collins. Don't think he has an analogue in the TV series. And he was a judge in Best in Show, which I'd completely forgotten about.
Was he really?
He was. He's listed in there. I suppose we should mention that Sheila Larkin played Margaret Scully, who has no particularly significant roles elsewhere.
She is a reoccurring character in the X-Files, though.
So do you want to take Beyond the Sea away?
Yeah, sure. The episode opens around Christmas time. Scully has had both of her parents, her mother and her father, to visit, and is just seeing them to the door. She has a slightly awkward exchange with her father. It's already made clear the fact that he's mainly disapproving of the fact that she's become an FBI agent. It later reveals in the episode it's because he hoped that she'd be a doctor. Scully falls asleep on the couch and wakes several hours later. She sees her father sitting in a chair opposite her, apparently speaking, but she can't make out what he's saying. She's distracted by a phone call, which is from her mother, telling her that her father has died of a massive heart attack. Scully is confused by this, but when she looks back to the chair, her father is nowhere to be seen. It then cuts to the funeral. Scully voices the fact that she'd always been concerned that her father didn't approve of the choices she'd made in her life. Her mother neither confirms nor denies this, instead just saying, "Oh, but he was your father." Meanwhile, we see a couple in North Carolina sat in their car in a lover's lane. They are approached by a police officer, although we do not see the man's face, who orders the man out of the vehicle. and then beats him and kidnaps both him and his girlfriend. The case has come to the attention of Mulder due to the fact that it is connected to a killer that he once profiled and helped put away called Luther Lee Boggs, played by Brad Dourif. He's concerned for Scully because he believes that she shouldn't be working as she's evidently affected by her dad's death, but Scully insists that she feels better being at work. Boggs is connected to this case because he had a epiphany while he was previously being executed. He believes he saw the souls of the people he killed flooding into his body, which has given him a connection to the dead. And through this, he has gained psychic powers and therefore can help identify the kidnapper, and hopes to do so before he kills. Mulder, unusually, is really sceptical about this. He believes that Boggs is a chancer, and that Boggs is just trying to use this to get out of a death penalty. Boggs himself has already voiced the fact that he will help only if his sentence is changed to life imprisonment. Mulder and Scully both visit Boggs in prison. Mulder gives him a piece of evidence to test whether or not his visions are genuine. Boggs takes this and gives an impression of what the killer is doing to the two kidnapped victims right now, but Mulder believes that it was all a scam. It's just a bit of his Knicks t-shirt that he's ripped off and has absolutely nothing to do with the case. Mulder storms out the room, believing Boggs to be a phony. However, Boggs begins singing Beyond the Sea, the title of the episode, and the song that was playing at Scully's father's funeral. Scully briefly has a vision and sees her father sitting in Boggs' face, and Boggs calls her by a pet name, Starbuck, which is something that only her father has ever used before. Due to this, Scully begins to kind of believe that Boggs might actually be on the level. She notices some key features that were mentioned in Boggs' vision while he was holding Mulder's t-shirt, and follows them and finds a warehouse where the teenagers were kept. She voices this to Mulder after giving a report in which she doesn't indicate Boggs and just kind of comments that she stumbled across this accidentally. However, Mulder is worried when she admits the fact that she did follow Boggs' directions, pointing out to her that Boggs is a liar and he would no doubt give false evidence if it would get her killed. That being said, they visit Boggs again and he gives some vague clues about the case. Acting on these, they find a warehouse. However, one of the clues Boggs gives directly to Scully is a warning about a white cross. While pursuing the killer, he gets away but does shoot Mulder, and Scully notices when she rushes to help him that Mulder's blood has splattered on this kind of structural pillar, which does resemble a white crucifix. Mulder, for the rest of the episode, is committed to hospital, critically injured. He is ultimately okay. He warns Scully that she should still be wary about trusting Boggs, believing that Boggs might have genuinely orchestrated this in a way that he was hoping to get one or both of them killed. Scully instead visits Boggs and indicates that she might be able to get him an appeal in return for his help. Boggs does give her indications to where the killer is hiding now, at a place called the Blue Devil Brewery. However, he then does reveal the fact that he knows that although Scully tried to get him help, that she ultimately failed, and Boggs has given her this information knowing the fact that he will still be executed. The last warning that Boggs gives her is to avoid the Blue Devil. Scully takes this to heart when they pursue the killer through the brewery. She eventually sees the killer run up onto a gang tree beneath the brewery's logo, which is indeed the Blue Devil. This causes her to hesitate, which is what saves her life ultimately, as the gang tree gives way and the killer falls to his death. Scully visits Boggs one last time in prison and suggests the fact that she knows that he couldn't have orchestrated the kidnapping, as the kidnapper would have also been wary of these dangers and wouldn't have died if Boggs and the killer were working together. Boggs claims to be able to contact her father and says that he has a message for Scully, but he will only give it to Scully if she comes and bears witness to his execution. Later at the execution, we see the kind of blinds come up and there is only a priest stood there. Scully has not attended. Instead, Scully has visited Mulder in hospital, where she voices the fact that she no longer believes Boggs to be a sidekick. She's kind of come to the conclusion that all the information he gained about her and her father he could have got from other means. Mulder questions why Scully still can't believe, even after all she's been through with this case, and Scully voices the fact that it frightens her. Mulder queries whether or not she should have gone to see Boggs if it meant that she otherwise will never know what her father's last message was. Scully voices the fact that she doesn't have to. She knows what he wanted to say because he was her father.
Thank you. I think it's worth noting the major shadow of this episode is the one that 20th Century Fox used to originally say no to the episode. is Silence of the Lambs.
It is very Silence of the Lambsy.
Well, we could, at Silence of the Lambs, we'll add in, there's a lot of Exorcist 3, especially Brad Dourif's bits of Exorcist 3.
Yeah, if you've seen Exorcist 3, there are a lot of bits where the police officer from the original Exorcist visits Brad Dourif's character in prison. Brad Dourif is actually in that movie a serial killer who's possessing Father Karras, the young priest from the original Exorcist. But, the kind of appearance of him shifts between Father Karras and Brad Dourif when they interview him in prison.
Yeah.
Which is very reminiscent of these scenes with Mulder and Scully interviewing Boggs in this.
Incredibly so. And Silence of the Lambs, we've got the level of security around him and sort of the paranoia and fixation on him and nod him into your head.
You even have some bits directly, like the monitoring his phone calls, like in Red Dragon.
Yes. Oh, yeah, Red Dragon's an absolute influence. And it wouldn't be a filmic reference yet, because the film was at least a decade away, but Zodiac, the real-world events of Zodiac, a lot of elements of that, especially with the Lover's Lane kidnapping at the very start.
And the killer disguising himself as a police officer.
Yeah, and shining the lights in your face and the boots, and there's loads of little details of Zodiac.
Very much like was it Mike Mageau killing in the Zodiac? One of the few survivors who reported a similar MO that the Zodiac had.
Yeah, so we've got a mixed bag of serial killer fact and fiction there. Which have all come together. I mean, I suspect in 1993 the Zodiac connection wouldn't have been as obvious, because I think it was on a much lower key at that point, because the 70s had been and gone.
Grace Smith's book would have been long released, though, so these details would have been out.
They'd have been out, but they wouldn't be in the public consciousness in the same way. It's like they've come up again because of things like American Horror Story and Zodiac itself. So they'd be gone a lower ebb in the 90s, because you'd have Hannibal Lecter and The Exorcist 3 as your bigger touchstones.
You do have other famous films that were based on the Zodiac, like Dirty Harry.
Yes, that's 70s again, though. So,
but it's such a big film, and it's such a kind of often referenced film.
That's true. But yeah, we've got a mixed bag of serial killer stuff in this one. And also Moby Dick.
I kind of touched on that briefly. Starbuck and Ahab being Scully and her dad's nicknames for each other.
Yep.
I think it's cute, and it comes from the fact that her father is ex-Navy, but I still think Starbuck is a better nickname to give to Mulder. He's more like Starbuck from Moby Dick, being the young idealist. It's not really Scully. True,
but you can also see that'll be why William Scully gave that to his daughter.
Is it more worrying that you lovingly call your father Ahab?
Probably.
The obsession-driven maniac who's lost his leg to a whale?
I've just realised something. We're not going to find out for a while, but Mulder's dad's called William.
Yes, he is.
They both have...
Did you not notice that
I didn't notice that before, no. So what you're telling me is we can actually have Batman v Superman moment where Scully is trying to kill Mulder and he says, "Oh, tell William I'm sorry." It's like, who's William? My father.
I think it'll be more interesting later to see the difference between Bill Scully and... Bill's the son, isn't it? William Scully and Scully's relationship versus William Mulder and Mulder's.
Yes.
Because you've got a connection with father figures having the same name there to kind of draw attention to the difference in the relationship.
Yeah, but that's some way off of that one.
The motivation of this episode, if you're interested anyway, was the fact that early episodes were criticised that Scully was a shallow character. So Morgan and Wong wrote this episode deliberately to give Scully more depth. So It is our first really Scully-centric episode. And I've got to admit, it's one of my favourites.
Oh yeah, it's a little artless that they've managed to do this partially by shooting Mulder, just to get him out of the way.
But
it's still good.
It's not Mulder being there that makes it, though.
No, I know.
It's all about Scully exploring her beliefs and being forced to question this, and you need Mulder out the way for that, really.
It's true. I think it is interesting, though, Scully exploring her beliefs, is that she doesn't touch on her religious beliefs at all, because we can see she's quite clearly wearing a crucifix.
She has been for some time.
Yeah, but there's no conflict there for her, is there? That Boggs may be psychically picking up her father versus any Catholic and Christian belief system, where I don't think you get this.
No, that's true. It doesn't mention that in the episode, but it's more looking into her beliefs of trying to explain something that can't necessarily be explained through science.
That's true.
When it's raw and it's personal to her as well.
So raw and personal that Mulder breaks some type and calls her Dana.
Yeah.
She's one of those, whoa, Mulder, what the hell's going on? She has never called you Fox to date. don't think anyone's called him Fox there, have they? No, even Phoebe calls him Fox.
No,
Think about it.
he's always Mulder.
He's always Mulder. But yeah, we've got Sculder shippers. This is another one for you, with Mulder stroking her cheek and telling her to take time off, calling her Dana.
It's not sexualized. It's all out of sympathy.
It is, but it's still I'm not necessarily looking at this from the sexual thing. It's also the intimacy and the knowing someone and caring for them. It's more than co-workers, isn't it? This is more into friends at the minimum. This is all.
It's maybe slightly demeaning as well, as the fact that he
true.
suddenly starts treating her with kid gloves like this.
True.
When she is also a professional who is very poor at first aid, but other than that.
Yep. Well, we'll go back to Jersey Devil with the whole sort of her view of Mulder is he's a jerk.
Mm.
And, of course, there's the song, which we can't sing. Which, for some reason, when I first watched this episode, I never picked up on the melody, so I thought Beyond the Sea was actually a sinister song. Because
it's a romantic song.
It is. But if you've somehow missed it's playing at the funeral, because I think one of my TVs growing up had dodgy speakers or was actually in mono rather than stereo, so it would miss some of the channels. So if you can't really hear the funeral song, and the first time you hear Beyond the Sea is Brad Dourif going...
Copywriting.
But it's more... It feels a lot more sinister coming out of Brad Dourif, doesn't it?
That's just Brad Dourif.
Yeah, it sort of sounds sinister, doesn't it?
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the sound in this episode as well, is that there is very little incidental music.
Yes.
It's particularly if Brad Dourif is on the scene, it is silent, and he draws all of your attention because he's brilliant in this role.
Well, he's a very established and recognised actor at this point, and a big draw. Probably the biggest actor they've had so far.
He's kind of big in certain circles. I mean, like you said...
He's done a lot.
The mainstream thing that he is known for these days is Grima Wormtongue, but that wouldn't have been created at the time this episode was.
No,
you'd probably have known him best from Child's Play and things like that.
And that's very notorious and sort of well done film with like 5 sequels,
at
4?
least.
There's a lot of them. Yeah, a remake, new TV series. He's still doing it. He was in. Well, actually, I found on his filmography because he listed Ready Player One. He was going. The hell is he doing in that? Oh, he's just with Chucky. This is a soundbite of Chucky, and he's credited as that. What were you doing in Ready Player One?
He wasn't Chucky in the remake, though. That was Mark Hamill.
Oh, true. But he is Chucky again in the new series or something, isn't he?
I think so. The new series definitely has Fiona Dourif as well.
Him. Okay, so I think one of the big things in this episode is, for the first time, we don't see Mulder playing a skeptic, we see Mulder being a skeptic. And he has no patience.
He completely changes his personality when he doesn't believe in someone.
Yeah. There is no give. There is no letting anyone explain it. He's very abrupt, very harsh. If you can't give him his answer now, he's not going to take it. Interesting reversal to how he's been. Even when he's been playing a skeptic, he's never behaved like he does in this episode.
It's called down by the fact that he has no trust in Boggs whatsoever.
No.
And it comes, I think, from the fact that he was not present for the killings. He was involved in the case previously that Boggs was involved, where we only get vague detail of it about, it's a bit like the Amityville DeFeo killings. He's murdered his entire family over a Thanksgiving dinner or something.
In some ways, it does actually strike me that he should be what Scully referenced in the pilot. When she says he helped catch Monty Props in 1988. It could have been
Luther Lee Boggs.
Yeah. But anyway, so Mulder being skeptical is weird because we get things like the fake out with the shirt or just saying, give me Jimi Hendrix. I want him to perform all along the Watchtower.
And he does, apparently.
Unfortunately, we don't get to see that one.
It's kind of ironic, the fact that Mulder is so antagonistic towards Boggs in this episode. As Mulder even says to Scully, I think at one point in this episode, is, you should open yourself up only when it's the truth. It's like, oh, good hypocrite, Mulder. So how are we distinguishing the fact of these genuine bizarre cases and the fake bizarre cases?
Yes, and also we're not going to get past that. Mulder, you were convinced it was cat mutilation last week and it was 2 girls who were killing their parents. Mulder, being a skeptical jerk in this episode, he's still the better people person because Scully still sucks at interpersonal relationships.
Interpersonal relationships and first aid in this episode.
And first aid. Oh god, yeah, when Mulder gets shot and she's just sort of...
She puts a coat over him.
Scully, you've trained medical doctor. This is, what, the 5th time we've seen you just fumble on basic first aid?
I like it when you immediately see them wheeling him in, talking about how he's in critical condition, and Scully's just kind of staring blankly. In my head, she's just thinking, oh yeah, maybe I should have put pressure on that.
Come on!
I'm still going to maintain, and I will look this up one week, is surely FBI agents have to have some first aid training.
Yeah.
Surely, if they're being trained to use guns, they must be trained to use first aid.
I wouldn't have that kind of faith in the law enforcement in America, I'm so afraid, but you never know. I did like, just for little comedic moments, the whole, we're doing the Red Dragon thing, we've got this fake newspaper produced. There are literally only 6 people who know that this is a fake newspaper report we've had specially printed.
Oh yes, I don't think I mentioned that previously. That was our previous way of trying to find out who Boggs' accomplice was, wasn't it? So
we deliver to a cell, Boggs reads it, and it's like, oh, in 2 hours' time he gets his phone privileges, we can see who he calls. And he calls Mulder. Which I did think was actually very funny.
Mm. And also, possibly a further indication that he's psychic. He's either psychic or he can read Mulder very well.
Yes. And knows exactly who's gone to the length to sort of say this. I think we've also got an interesting throwback to your point about Scully's relationship with authority.
Mm.
Not just her dad, because there's the militaristic attitude to their relationship, where she actually salutes him, which might be a nice pet thing to do with your dad, but still, that's a very hierarchical thing where he's your superior officer and everything.
You also kind of see from the funeral that Scully at least has one brother present there.
Yep. Possibly 2. It's not actually clear who the members... There are not a lot of people at this funeral.
No, it's a very small funeral, but from the way they're standing in there, you know that, at least Scully's got a brother present. So you've got this girl growing up in a family with a very militaristic father and an older brother, and...
Yep.
Hence the saluting, I guess.
That makes sense. But I was thinking also more so Mulder's been shot and he's in the hospital, now Scully is running things. And Boggs has said, I want a deal before I tell you anything. Scully goes to the prison warden or the government or whoever it is, and they just say no. And she does not protest. Just, okay, walks out again.
But she still tries.
She does still try.
She does lead Boggs on a bit, kind of trying to make him think that she's got this deal that she hasn't, but it doesn't change the fact that she did actually try, which is why Boggs helps her in the end.
Yeah, and it's the nice ambiguity of was he actually prophetic, or was this all carefully arranged?
It certainly does lead you to think in the episode that he is actually psychic. You do on a couple of occasions see him, Boggs' perspective seeing the ghosts.
Yes, I mean, it's not clear in the flashback whether that's him doing storytelling, but when they actually lead him to be executed at the end, yes, we get his point of view, and he is seeing the dead people lying in the holes.
So on that basis, I'd argue the fact that Mulder's wrong again in this case, and Boggs is actually on the level.
True, but he is... I don't know, I don't think we actually get confirmation he is actually...
You get nothing to suggest that he actually knows the killer directly. And also, all his warnings are genuine. When Scully does follow his instructions and not go near the devil, she doesn't get hurt.
That's true.
So, even though Mulder argues the fact that Boggs is deliberately trying to get them hurt, he's actually not.
Yes, yeah. So it's a ambiguous one.
It adds an interesting level of sympathy to a character that shouldn't be sympathetic in any way as well. Because, Boggs is a cold-blooded killer. Of his own family, even.
Yeah.
Which, again, ties interestingly because you see the fact that Scully's dad has just died and she evidently loves her family. So the two of them should not be compatible, yet they do manage to work together and get this killer.
Very true. I do have to wonder, as well, the story about Scully stealing a cigarette. Well, that doesn't seem to sort of be convinced by that. There's some little details there, which, how on earth would he find out? Because there are, these days, you can fully believe that anyone could find out most things about you because someone will have said something somewhere on Facebook, on Twitter, on some other social media. In 1993, that kind of internet surveillance thing wasn't at all possible, so finding out some of the finer grained details. Because as much as Scully says she could have read that she was Mulder's partner and therefore read up on Scully's life and find out about William Mulder, the Ahab Starbuck thing is the kind of thing you might get in the publication as a cute detail, but that's also... that feels more personal than you might be able to sort of drag up from just researching.
It's not the kind of thing I think a military man would or somebody would write in the obituary for a military man.
No, or even just an article about, officers in the Navy and their families and things. It's the kind of thing on Facebook you'd get where basically you do sign-offs, wouldn't you? You sort of say, oh, well, hey, Pad, I'm coming over for Christmas, and it's like, great, Starbuck, we'll make up a room for you.
Yeah.
I can see that being a Facebook thing. Have you got anything else?
Okay, our final climatic showdown at the Blue Devil Brewery, which is actually a fairly exciting chase for an X-Files episode as well.
Yeah.
But the first thing that happens is our killer is shot.
Yes.
And yet this wounded man manages to outrun about 6 trained police officers and Scully. And he manages to evade them for a surprisingly long time without showing down, including a bit where he smacks one police officer in the face and pushes him down the staircase and stuff like that.
Didn't he hit him with something really stupid?
It's like a bucket or something like that he swings into his face.
It's very Three Stooges.
It's the incredibly evasive, severely wounded man.
Well, bullets only make him stronger.
Yeah, goes without saying. Also, tying into what I mentioned about Boggs being oddly sympathetic, is at his absolute last. He has tears in his eyes through most of the episode, so you can't really go for that. But you get the impression at the end that he's just ultimately very lonely.
Yeah, I can see that.
His last request to Scully is that he wants her there because he knows he won't have any other witnesses at his execution. And, when we see his kind of long walk at the end, it's terrifying. He tries to turn back, he's faced with the souls of everyone he's murdered. He's terrified, he's devastated, and then I found it surprisingly sad when that curtain went up and there was nobody there waiting for him. Even though he's a deplorable man and a serial killer and you should have no empathy for this person. It's like he's ultimately done one good thing at the end and he still has his sad, lonely death.
That's very true.
I know I shouldn't empathise with Luther Boggs that much, but a little sad. I mean, he'd ultimately saved 2 people with his last move and he gained nothing from doing so. There's also a lot of power in that final scene with Mulder as well. It's not only Scully kind of admitting her confliction with the X-Files and the fact that the concept of believing is frightening, but also the fact that they never tell you what Scully's father message is, but you know.
Yes. As
a viewer, you're in no doubt in your mind what Luther Boggs would tell her.
Yeah. And what her mother has been alluding to the entire time.
Mm. He was your father, of course he is proud of you.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you did.
Mm.
Your happiness is paramount, even though it seems to have caused some friction in the family in the past.
Yeah, but they haven't seen how bad she is at first aid.
No.
Maybe they wouldn't want her to be a doctor if so.
It's a good job, this is really dark, good job that William Scully did not have a heart attack while at the house.
That's terrible.
That is terrible.
Yeah.
It's a case of, was my father proud of me? No! He died while he was sat there going,
You did at least put a coat over him.
Oh, great, thanks, Scully. Really helped with his coronary. It's amazing that Mrs. Scully's still talking to her daughter at times.
Oh, it's awful, awful. You're a terrible person,
I might cut that bit out. Okay, so oddly this time we can't really have Conspiracy Corner.
No, there's no conspiracy.
There's no conspiracy.
I'm out of a job.
I'm sure it'll come back in.
There might be more conspiracies in the X-Files to come.
No, I think next episode at least you'll get one that's definitely a conspiratorial bent to it.
What's next episode?
Gender bender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get something.
I guess it'll be Genderbender and Lazarus next time then.
Yes, I mean, Genderbender is kind of a spoiler for Genderbender on the grounds that it's not going to seem like it's a conspiracy episode until like the last 5 seconds of the episode, at which point it suddenly is. So in the absence of Conspiracy Corner, we're very sorry, but it'll be back next week.
I'm playing my smallest violin.
You are. The government have to be involved in one of these episodes somewhere. We think. Not these two. Can you imagine the government actually being behind Cecil Lively?
I look forward to them using him further later then.
Well, it'd be great. I mean, basically, this is so it turns out that Avatar: The Last Airbender is actually the far future, and he is the basis of the Fire Nation.
Nice try.
Okay. It might have worked.
No, I think we've clearly got no conspiracy this time. Cecil Lively does not feel like he's going to be a reoccurring character, and Luther Boggs is dead.
Yep.
So.
We know Phoebe is not. There will not ever be a recurring character.
Mm.
Okay, so otherwise, if you want to get hold of us, our email is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
We have, if you search for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast on Facebook, you should be able to find us. If not, we are GetStrange42 on both Twitter and Tumblr, or at GetStrange42 at universadon.com on Mastodon.
Thank you. Our theme music is Envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com. It's licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Until next week, as alluded to, our episodes are Genderbender and Lazarus. Until next time, believe the lie.